If you're watching this, then you found my story. My name is Clara. This isn't just a job for me. It's the armor I put on to fight a war I never saw coming. It started at 1 a.m., with a knock on my door that shattered the silence in my world. My daughter came home broken. Where are you listening from? I want to know how far the echoes of a mother's rage have traveled. Leave a comment, tell me your story. Now let me take you back to the beginning. The flickering blue light of the television was the only illumination in my living room. I had just sunk into the worn cushions of my sofa, my body a dead weight after a double shift. Being a sergeant in a town like Oakwood meant paperwork, bar fights, and the constant low-grade hum of petty crime. That night, I'd broken up a brawl at the Rusty Nail and spent hours drowning in incident reports. My bones ached for sleep. Outside, the familiar soundtrack of my neighborhood played on. A dog barking incessantly a few houses down, the guttural roar of a teenager's motorcycle speeding past. It was 1 a.m., but the world refused to quiet down. I closed my eyes, trying to let the noise wash over me. Then a sound cut through the haze, not the casual thump of a cat, but a frantic, desperate pounding on my front door. My heart slammed against my ribs. Cop instincts kicked in, overriding the fatigue. I was on my feet, moving silently, my hand closing around the solid wood of a baseball bat I kept leaning against the wall. "Who is it?" I called out, my voice rough with exhaustion and sudden tension. No answer. Just another series of knocks, weaker this time, followed by a choked, trembling whisper. "Mom, please." My blood ran cold. It was Lena, my daughter. I fumbled with the locks, my hands suddenly clumsy, and yanked the door open. Lena fell into my arms, her body buckling like a marionette with its strings cut. She was trembling violently, her sobs muffled against my shoulder. "Lena, baby, what happened?" I asked, my voice cracking. I guided her under the dim glow of the porch light, and what I saw stole the air from my lungs. Her right eye was swollen shut, a violent, ugly purple. A deep cut split her lower lip, dried blood caking her chin. She clutched her ribs, her entire posture screaming of pain. "It was Mark," she whispered, her voice a shattered thing. He hit me. Because of her. Because of Jasmine." A silent, cold fury began to boil in my veins. I held my daughter, my bright, beautiful Lena, and felt my heart fracture. Without a word, I helped her inside, away from the prying eyes of the night. I laid her gently on the sofa, the same one I'd been collapsing on minutes before. I rushed to the kitchen for a wet cloth and the first aid kit. My hands, usually so steady when handling a service weapon, trembled as I dabbed at the blood on her lip. "Just lie still, sweetheart. Let me see." The cut was deep. It would need stitches. But it was the way she guarded her stomach that terrified me. "Lena, I need to see," I said softly, moving her hands. I lifted her shirt, and a gasp caught in my throat. A massive dark bruise bloomed across her abdomen, a constellation of purple and black. It wasn't from one hit. It was from many. "Did Mark do this?" I asked, my voice a low, dangerous whisper. She didn't need to answer. Her tears were confession enough. I grabbed my phone and dialed the emergency line I knew by heart. "Dr. Evans, it's Clara. I'm bringing Lena in. Be ready." My car was in the shop, so I called a taxi. As we waited, Lena's phone on the coffee table lit up incessantly. 7 missed calls from Mark flashed on the screen, followed by a preview of a text. "You'll regret running. You have nowhere to hide." Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me. I reached for the phone, but Lena snatched it away with a panicked strength. "Don't, Mom. Please, it will only make it worse." The fear in her eyes was a physical pain. I didn't push. I just held her hand, promising her safety with a touch I no longer felt I could guarantee. The hospital was a blur of sterile white light and hushed urgency. Dr. Evans, her face a mask of professional calm, documented every injury. Bruises on her wrists where she'd been grabbed, the split lip, the swollen eye, the horrific contusion on her torso. We need an X-ray, Clara. I'm worried about fractured ribs, she said, her tone grave. I nodded, numb. In the waiting room, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I knew it was him. I rejected the call, my thumb pressing the screen with such force I thought it might crack. When we returned home, the first hints of dawn were staining the sky. I got Lena settled in my bed, her breathing finally evening out in an exhausted sleep. I stepped outside for a moment, the cool air doing little to douse the fire inside me. My neighbor, Mr. Henderson, was retrieving his newspaper. He saw my face and hurried over. Clara? Everything all right? Heard some commotion last night. I gave him the abbreviated, painful truth. His eyes hardened. That no good. I always had a bad feeling about him. Then I remembered. Mr. Henderson was paranoid about security. He had a camera facing the street. Ben, does your camera point towards my porch? He nodded, pulling out his phone. The video was clear. 1:02 a.m. Lena stumbling up my path, collapsing against the door, her desperate knocks echoing through the digital silence. I recorded the footage on my own phone, my evidence collector's mind already whirring. Back inside, I went to my bedroom and opened the closet. There hung my police uniform, pressed professional, a symbol of order. I dressed slowly, methodically. Each button fastened, each strap adjusted was a renewal of a vow. I was a mother, yes, but I was also an officer of the law. I picked up my phone and dialed. Arthur, I said to my lawyer, my voice cold and steady. Start the plan. Now. The next few days were a grim routine of care and investigation. I documented Lena's injuries with clinical precision, each photo a fresh wound to my soul. I met with Arthur, laying out the evidence. The photos, the medical report, the video from Mr. Henderson. This is a strong start, Clara, Arthur said, steepling his fingers. But we need more. We need to prove the infidelity. It paints a pattern of behavior. Lena, in her fragile state, confirmed the other woman's name, Jasmine Reed. She told me how Jasmine would flaunt her relationship with Mark, taunting Lena in her own home, provoking his rage. The final shocking piece came from an old contact, Frank, at the county clerk's office. He called me, his voice low. Clara, I saw your and Lena's names on a land transfer deed. A property signed over to a Jasmine Reed. It seemed off. My blood ran cold. The land. My grandfather's land. I rushed to his office. The signatures on the document were clumsy forgeries. Frank whispered that Mark had filed them, claiming we'd authorized it. The betrayal was so profound it felt unreal. He hadn't just broken my daughter's body and spirit. He was trying to steal her heritage. I left Lena in the safe, watchful care of Mr. Henderson. I changed into civilian clothes, but I carried my badge and a file of evidence. I drove to Mark's auto shop, the source of his arrogant pride. The place reeked of grease and male entitlement. Two of his mechanics, T-Bone and Rex, leered as I walked in. I ignored them and went straight to the back office. Mark looked up from his ledger, a smug smile plastered on his face. Well, well, mother-in-law, to what do I owe the pleasure? I dropped the file on his desk. The game's over, Mark. He flipped through the photos of Lena's bruises, the medical report, the forged land papers. His smile didn't falter, but a vein throbbed in his temple. You think this scares me? I have friends in this town. I'm not here to scare you, I said, my voice icy. I'm here to inform you. We'll see each other in court. He stood up, his chair screeching back. No one will believe you. They'll all say she's a hysterical liar. I looked him dead in the eye. I will. And my voice carries a batch. You messed with the wrong family. As I turned to leave, he shouted after me. You walk out that door, you're dead to me. I paused at the threshold. Consider the feeling mutual. Mark fought back hard. He hired a slick lawyer from the city, Lydia Sharp, who filed a countersuit claiming Lena was an unstable liar trying to extort him, and that I was abusing my police power to frame him. The rumors started almost immediately. Whispers at the grocery store. Sideways glances at the coffee shop. Lena probably asked for it. Clara's always been overbearing. The town I'd served for 2 decades seemed to turn on us overnight. One evening I found a note slipped under my door. Scrawled block letters. Drop it or she gets hurt. It wasn't a scare tactic. It was a declaration of war. I filed the note with the rest of my evidence. The dirtier he played, the more rope he gave me to hang him with. Arthur was concerned. Public opinion is shifting, Clara. We need a bombshell. I knew what he meant. We needed Jasmine. I found Jasmine at a dive bar on the edge of town. The midnight hour. She was sitting alone, nursing a drink, the picture of forced confidence. I sat down across from her. She eyed me with defensive suspicion. Do I know you? I slid an envelope across the sticky table. Inside was a copy of the forged land deed and a printout of her substantial gambling debts, which Frank had helped me uncover. I'm Lena's mother, I said. Mark used you. He's going down for fraud and assault. If you stay loyal, you'll go down with him for conspiracy. She laughed, a brittle, hollow sound, until she saw the papers. The color drained from her face. He promised me. She stammered. He said the land was a sure thing. That we'd be set. His promises are worthless, I said coldly. The district attorney already has this file. Testify for the truth, and I'll make sure they know you cooperated. Just then T-Bone and Rex walked in. They saw me and started toward our table. I didn't move. I simply placed my police badge on the table next to my untouched drink. They froze, muttered between themselves, and retreated. Jasmine saw it all. Saw that Mark's protection was an illusion. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. Okay, she whispered. I'll testify. The courthouse was packed on the day of the hearing. The air was thick with anticipation. Mark sat with his lawyer, trying to project an aura of calm confidence, but I could see the sweat on his brow. Arthur presented our case meticulously. The photos, the medical reports, Mr. Henderson's damning video. When Lena took the stand, her voice was small but clear as she described the abuse and the constant presence of Jasmine, who Mark flaunted. Lydia Sharp was vicious in her cross-examination, trying to paint Lena as manipulative and unstable. But then Arthur called Jasmine. She walked to the stand, avoiding Mark's glare. Haltingly, then with growing conviction, she confirmed the affair, the taunts, and Mark's scheme to forge the land transfer to pay off her debts and silence her. Mark slammed his fist on the table. You're a lying traitor. The judge gavelled for order. When it was my turn, I looked not at the judge, but at the people in the gallery, my neighbors. I stand here not just as an officer, I said, my voice ringing through the room, but as a mother. My duty is to protect, and that includes protecting my daughter from a wolf in sheep's clothing. The law isn't just for strangers. It's for everyone, even those who sit at your dinner table. The judge's verdict was swift. A permanent restraining order, asset freeze, the land transfer nullified, and a referral to the DA for criminal prosecution for domestic violence and fraud. Mark was led away in handcuffs. The local paper ran the story with his mugshot on the front page. The town's whispers turned from condemnation to sympathy, but I felt no triumph, only a weary relief. The real victory was quieter. It was in the slow, painful healing of my daughter. Lena moved back in with me. The nightmares came less frequently. She started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Isla, who helped her rebuild the pieces of her self-worth. Weeks turned into months. One afternoon, I came home to the smell of her baking chocolate chip cookies, something she hadn't done since she was a teenager. She was humming. It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I continued my work, but with a new purpose. I made sure the department had better protocols for domestic cases. I became the person other women would quietly approach, their eyes holding the same fear I'd seen in Lena's. Sitting on my porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, I felt a sense of peace. The scars remained for both of us. But they were no longer bleeding. They were a testament to survival. Lena joined me, handing me a mug of tea. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Thank you, Mom," she said softly, "for not being silent." I put my arm around her. Justice had been slow and the cost had been high, but it had given me back my daughter. And in the end, that was the only verdict that truly mattered. Of course. Here are chapters 10 through 16, continuing the story of Clara and Lena. The weeks following the verdict settled into an uneasy, fragile peace. Mark was in custody awaiting his criminal trial, and the restraining order was a tangible shield. Lena continued her sessions with Dr. Isla, and I saw glimmers of her old self, a genuine laugh at a stupid movie, the energy to argue with me about what to make for dinner. It was normalcy and it felt like a miracle. But the system, I knew, was a slow turning wheel. Mark's lawyer, Lydia Sharp, was filing appeals, challenging the asset freeze, and generally making every step a bureaucratic battle. The criminal trial for assault and fraud was months away. I threw myself back into work, but my focus had shifted. I started paying closer attention to the domestic disturbance calls we often treated as routine. I saw the subtle signs I'd missed before. The woman who wouldn't make eye contact, the child who flinched at raised voices. I began running informal training sessions at the precinct, using my experience not as a personal anecdote, but as a case study. I called it reading the silence. One afternoon, a young rookie, Officer Miller, came to my desk after a call. "Sarge, that couple on Elm Street. The wife said she fell, but the story didn't add up. I remembered what you said about the way she positioned herself between him and me. I separated them, got her to talk. She confessed. We made an arrest." He looked at me, a new kind of respect in his eyes. It was a small victory, but it felt like a part of Lena's pain was being transformed into protection for someone else. The peace was shattered by a late-night phone call. It was Lena, her voice thin and reedy with panic. She was at Mr. Henderson's. "Mom, he called me." "Who?" "Mark. He's in jail, honey, he can't call you." "Not him," she whispered. "T-Bone. He used a blocked number. He said the boss remembers you, and that I should watch my back." A cold dread washed over me. Mark was still running his game from behind bars. I drove to Mr. Henderson's immediately, my mind racing. This was witness intimidation, a serious charge, but proving it was another matter. A blocked number, a vague threat. It was designed to terrify without leaving a clear trail. The next day I went to see Arthur. "We need to move faster. The intimidation has started." Arthur sighed, rubbing his temples. "The wheels of justice, Clara. They grind slowly, but this gives us leverage. We can petition for a no-contact order that includes his known associates." Felt like playing whack-a-mole. For every step forward, Mark's shadow stretched from his cell to pull us back. The break we desperately needed came from an unexpected source. Jasmine Reed. Arthur called me, his voice buzzing with urgency. "Jasmine wants to meet. She says she has something. She's scared." We met in a sterile conference room at Arthur's office. Jasmine looked older, the brash confidence she'd worn in the bar completely gone. She clutched a cheap burner phone in her hands. After I testified, she began, not meeting our eyes. "T-Bone found me. He said Mark was furious. He gave me this." She slid the phone across the table. "He told me to keep it on, that I'd get instructions. A few days ago, a text came through." Arthur picked up the phone. The message was from another blocked number. "The mother cop needs to back off. Remind her what's at stake. Use the girl." My blood ran cold. Use the girl. "Lena. This is our bombshell," Arthur said, his voice tight with excitement. "Conspiracy to commit witness intimidation. This ties Mark directly to the threats against Lena. The DA will have to act on this." Jasmine looked at me, her eyes pleading. "I'm done. I just want out. You will be I promised, a new grim determination settling in my bones. We finally had the ghost by its throat. With Jasmine's burner phone and sworn statement, Commander Ross authorized a raid on Mark's auto shop. We were looking for anything that could link him to T-Bone and the intimidation campaign, or any other illegal activities. The raid happened at dawn. I was there in uniform, but as an observer, it was too personal for me to lead. The place was a fortress of grease and secrets. While the team tossed the office, Officer Miller, sharp-eyed and thorough, noticed a loose floorboard under a greasy rug. Prying it up, they found a metal lockbox. It took a battering ram to open it. Inside wasn't just evidence of intimidation. There were ledgers. Detailed, handwritten records of a loan sharking operation, with amounts, names, and the brutal collection methods listed in cold, clinical shorthand. He wasn't just an abuser. He was a predator on a larger scale. T-Bone and Rex were arrested on the spot. The charges against Mark multiplied exponentially. Usury, conspiracy, racketeering. His world was crumbling from the inside out. Faced with the mountain of evidence from the lockbox and the testimony of Jasmine and now his own henchmen, who were quickly turning on him to save their own skins, Mark's defense collapsed. His lawyer, Lydia Sharp, approached Arthur with a deal. Mark would plead guilty to the charges of aggravated assault and fraud. In exchange, the DA would drop the more complex racketeering charges, which would require a long, costly trial. Most importantly, from my perspective, he would agree to a no-contact order in perpetuity and waive all rights to appeal. It was a compromise. He would serve significant time, but not the decades the racketeering charges could bring. Arthur presented it to me and Lena. "He'll be in prison for years, Clara," Arthur said gently. "And this spares Lena the trauma of a long public trial where she'd be cross-examined by Sharp. It gives you right more 2 chapters." The crisp autumn air carried a sense of normalcy I had almost forgotten. Lena was thriving in her social work program, and I had settled into a new role as a community liaison officer, focusing on domestic violence prevention. Our new condo felt like a sanctuary, a place scrubbed clean of old ghosts. It was on a quiet Tuesday evening that the past tapped on our door, not with a fist but with a timid, hesitant knock. I opened it to find a woman I barely recognized. It was Carol, Mark's mother. She stood on the welcome mat, her shoulders hunched, her face a roadmap of grief and shame. She clutched a worn handbag like a life preserver. "Clara," she whispered, her voice frayed. "I know I have no right to be here." My body went rigid, a familiar defensive shield slamming into place. Lena, who had been studying on the sofa, looked up, her face paling. "What do you want, Carol?" I asked, my voice flat, not inviting her in. Tears welled in her eyes. I've been in therapy. Since the sentencing. I had to face what I let myself ignore. The signs were there. The way he spoke about Lena, his temper. I made excuses. She looked past me, her gaze finding Lena. "I am so sorry, Lena. From the bottom of my soul. I failed you. I failed as a mother, and as a grandmother to the family you might have had." Lena stood up slowly, walking to stand beside me. She didn't speak, just watched Carol, her expression unreadable. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Carol continued, her voice breaking. I needed to say it to your faces. I am ashamed. And I am so sorry for the part my silence played." She placed a small sealed envelope on the small table by the door. "This is for you, Lena. It's not from him. It's from me. It's the money from his childhood savings bond. It's clean. It has nothing to do with any of it. Use it for your studies." Without another word, she turned and walked away, her figure dissolving into the twilight. Lena picked up the envelope, her hands trembling slightly. We stood in silence for a long moment, the ghost of Mark's world having briefly intersected with ours once more. "He doesn't define her, Mom," Lena said finally, her voice soft but firm. "Her shame is hers to carry, not mine anymore." She tucked the envelope into a drawer. I'll donate it to the women's shelter. In that moment, I saw the final piece of her healing click into place. She was no longer just free from Mark. She was free from the entire toxic ecosystem that had enabled him. 6 months later, I stood at a podium in the town's community center. The room was filled, local officials, my colleagues from the precinct, community advocates, and most importantly, survivors and their families. Lena sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Today, I said, my voice clear and strong, we are not just opening a building, we are opening a door. The Lena Garcia Resilience Center is a promise that no one in our community has to face their darkest hours alone. The idea had been born from the ashes of our ordeal. Using the remainder of the land sale money and a generous city grant we'd fought for, we had transformed a vacant lot into a safe haven. It housed emergency shelter beds, legal aid offices, counseling rooms, and a community space for support groups. Lena, now a certified peer support counselor, would be running the center's youth program. Mr. Henderson, our ever-vigilant neighbor, was on the board of directors. Dr. Isla had agreed to offer pro bono workshops. Even Officer Miller volunteered to teach self-defense classes. As I cut the ribbon, the applause wasn't just for me or for Lena. It was for every person who had helped us, for every survivor who had found their voice, and for every future victim who would now have a place to turn. After the ceremony, a young woman with a shy smile approached Lena. Your story. I saw it online. It gave me the courage to leave. Lena took her hand. You're safe now, she said, and I heard the echo of my own words from that terrible night, now infused with a strength that was entirely her own. Watching them talk, I saw the ripple effect of our pain and our fight. It had traveled far, from a desperate knock on a door to this room full of light and hope. The story that had started with a mother's vengeance had ended with a community's redemption. Our battle had not just saved us, it had begun to save others, and in doing so, had woven our scars into the very fabric of a stronger, kinder town. This is what happens when we choose to turn our pain into purpose. The story that started with a knock on my door now has a new address. A place of safety, of healing, of new beginnings. To everyone who has followed this journey, you were a part of this. Your support, your stories, they all mattered. Remember, your courage is never for you alone. It becomes a beacon for others lost in the dark. This is Sergeant Clara Garcia signing off. Be each other's beacons. Thank you.